Hello, you're listening to the podcast called What No One Knows. I'm your host, Lisa Marie Garcia. Please join us as I talk with some of the most important influencers, from entrepreneurs to C-suites to founders to venture capitalists. You will want to know their answer to the question, what no one knows. Thank you for joining. Hello. This is Lisa Marie Garcia. I'm so excited for us to be together while you hear another episode of What No One Knows. We're in the podcast studio at the Tampa Bay Wave and very excited to introduce our guest, Miss Rebecca Brown. Rebecca Brown, welcome to downtown Tampa Bay on a beautiful, almost kind of morning.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here, Lisa Marie.
Thank you so much for being here. So we're going to just dig right in. And talk about your entrepreneurial journey, your founder story, your business, what you're rocking and rolling, how you moved here. There's so much to talk to you about. And as you've been seeing, those of you listening and watching right now, the teaser has been that this gal was this rock star, but was also a rock star on Shark Tank a few years back. So we're going to dig into that because I've been promising some news about that. But before we do, let me give a little of your background, just like 1% probably, really. Harvard educated, Columbia educated, moved here, lived in Manhattan, New York, rocking and rolling with that. But you have so much experience to share to our listeners in the entrepreneurial space and the startup space. So you have this amazing resume and biography, but I'm just going to let some of that come out in our conversation. Is that cool?
Sounds great.
Okay, great. All right, so let's just start with, if you don't mind, let's start with that company called Solemates. And I think people really want to know maybe some little known facts about Shark Tank a little bit, or tell us about your journey there. I don't know if a lot of the listeners might be like me that have watched like almost every episode 100 times. So please tell us about that journey.
I would be happy to. So I created the company Solemates out of personal necessity. Believe it or not, I was tired of going to outdoor weddings and parties wearing high heels and having my high heels sink into the grass. And there may be a lot of male listeners who may not have experienced that firsthand, but you've probably witnessed it. For me, it started at my high school prom when I was dressed up with my friends, trying to take pictures on my parents' lawn, and was completely frustrated by ruining my heels and feeling clumsy. And that experience really stayed with me for many, many years until I was in business school at Columbia in New York and decided it was finally time to take action and see if I could invent a product. I actually never really considered creating a whole business around that product. I thought maybe I'll invent it and license it. I had worked at Goldman Sachs before business school and was planning to go back after school, which I did. But the idea for the heel protector quickly took on a life of its own because I told friends about the idea, and many of them were planning a wedding or going to weddings and parties and had experienced the same frustration. So I had a lot of interest in bringing the product to light. And fast forward, I ended up doing that. I left my job at Goldman Sachs to pursue the business and ended up creating a full product line of shoe and foot care solutions, kind of like a Dr. Scholl's meets Burt's Bees. So everything to make your shoes feel better and look better and your feet feel better. So Shark Tank was probably one of the most extraordinary experiences along that journey of building the company. As a longtime viewer of the show and fan, it was a dream come true. And I will say that it was very surreal. If anyone listening has ever done any sort of television segment, especially an edited television segment, you'll appreciate that much of what happens is kind of not in the final cut. So the surreal nature of it was that it was about an hour and a half pitching to the sharks, answering their questions, very stressful, chaotic.
Imagine.
And it is all then boiled down to about an 8-minute segment.
Right.
So when it aired, I was seeing the edited version for the first time. So even though I had gone through the whole experience, I did not know how they would portray me and what they would sort of cut it into the final segment. So that was definitely one of the angles that was just surreal and something that was completely out of my control. But it was an amazing experience, dream come true.
What so much to ask there, but what was the, like, how much, do you have stats, like how many people tried to be on that show? Or, how was the vetting process? Did you go through so many rounds? Talk about that just for a minute.
Yes, a lot of people, I don't have recent stats, but I know it's thousands of submissions every year. There is a multi-step process when you apply. And so it's at least 3, sometimes 4 rounds. And so I think on that initial application I wouldn't be surprised if there are over 100,000 submissions, literally people that have ideas that may not be very far along and just submit an application. But once you go forward with that, then you submit a video and there's some back and forth. So I think the actual number of companies that get to tape is something in this maybe 60 to 75 per season out of thousands that are applying every year. The journey for Soulmates was interesting, and this is something that I've shared with founders at other times, which is we actually tried out a couple years before and did not make it. And the reason I think this is a good lesson in being a founder is that sometimes it doesn't work out on the first shot and you try again. So one of the mistakes we made in the first go around was there was an audition at Columbia Business School for founders who had come from Columbia to pitch to the Shark Tank producers. And we did that and we got to the next round. And the next round was to create a submission video and tell them about your business and your background. We blew it. We overproduced it. We thought it was meant to be scripted and just low energy. It was a terrible video. To this day, I hope nobody ever sees that video. And we did not make it. So a year later, we thought, let's give this another try. We were getting other inquiries from other shows to try out. And we thought, well, why don't we just see if we can get another chance? So the second time we applied, again, had to submit that video. We did a completely different approach. We were very candid, showed our energy, had a friend come into our office with a camera and just record.
Nice.
And we talked. And that's what they want. And that's the lesson from that experience is you want to always be authentic as a founder. Do not deviate from your authenticity because that is unique to you and your business. And there are times when you may feel inadequate and you may feel like you have to put up a front that isn't necessarily the real you. Don't do it. It won't serve you well in the long run. And so because we were showing our authenticity and laughing and having fun with it, that's what they wanted to see. So that's what led us to get on the show.
Such a great lesson there. Did you ask them, or did they give you feedback as to why you didn't make it, or did you just kind of figure that out? I mean, how did you get there to kind of know that was maybe one of the variables that was negative?
We figured it out because when we did reach out for the second time, the producer kind of said, send us a video, a little more candid.
Well, and so the reason I brought that up also is that you also have to be open to feedback, and you have to want it, and you have to, care about that. And there's a lot of times where you might have founders or business owners that have been doing things the same way forever. They'll say they're open to feedback, but they're not. They still stay on that. So it was good. You're like, okay, yeah, let's redo it and do it completely different, a 360-degree different. So
yeah,
I love that. Great lesson. So here you are in Manhattan and you're rocking and rolling, and then you said then COVID happened, and then all of a sudden now you're in St. Pete's for a few years. Can you talk through that? And then also how because there's the Tampa Bay Wave engagement that happened to that. Will you share that with our listeners?
Yes. The fun thing about life is you really never know what may happen. And if you had said to me 5 years ago when I was living in New York that you're going to live in St. Petersburg, Florida, I would not have believed you. So much like was the situation with Meryl, it has a shelf life.
Yeah.
So we had already kind of contemplated. My mother-in-law has lived in St. Pete for 25 years. And she has a couple rental properties that she was not renting out because of the pandemic. So she said, why don't you guys put your stuff in storage and come down for 6 months and wait it out? And that seemed to be the best idea in the world.
Yeah.
So we did that and got down here in the fall of 2020 and arrived and thought, why would we go back?
Right.
This is an amazing place to live. It's beautiful. The water is amazing. So here we are 4+ years later, and I love it. Absolutely.
So how did you become, how did you hear about the Tampa Bay Wave, and how?
When I first came to the area, I knew I wanted to get involved in the local startup scene and the entrepreneurs ecosystem. And so the Wave is very well known here in the area. And I had connected with a founder who had gone through the Accelerator and suggested that I might be interested in becoming a mentor. So I met with the team, and it really resonated with me. The mission of the Wave and the programs that they offer to founders really just was, I thought, fantastic, and I wanted to support the cause. So I joined as a mentor in 2022, and here I am a couple years later. I've worked with many different founders. I love the community that the Wave offers.
for sure.
It's really unparalleled. Um, it's everybody's so friendly, and there's such diversity in the founders. And I love the fact that they have the different cohorts, fintech, health tech, women founders. It's just really wonderful. But the community is something that you can't really force. It's either going to happen naturally or it's not, and the Wave has it.
Agree. Yeah, agree 100%. I was going to ask you, do you remember what your first cohort group was? Because I love that too, like that diversity. You know, they're going to do the Blue Wave. I hope I can be a part of that soon. So do you remember your first one? What was the first one you mentored a couple of years back?
Yeah, my first one was the fintech cohort.
Fintech.
At the time, I was actually working with a fintech SPAC. And so that was a lot of the work I was doing with my advisory firm was targeting fintech companies. So the first cohort that I worked with and just offered feedback and pitch practice sessions and things like that was the fintech cohort. And I was really struck by the innovation, for sure, that the founders had, but their receptiveness to feedback. To
Yes.
echo your point earlier about, as a founder, you have to be open to feedback. And I was really, really impressed with how respectful the founders were with taking the feedback from the mentors and the advisors. And that just kind of emphasized, the quality of the founders that come into this program.
You know, it's a culture. We know that, right? I mean, and it starts at the top. I mean, anytime you're moving through any business that you're either a patron of or a client of, or what, when you start to see the negative, it starts at the top. When you notice the difference of how they treat you, it starts at the top positively, right? So I think I say all that to echo what you said, the respectful nature of the cohorts, the gratefulness. That's what I've noticed with so many, right, of the cohorts. They're so grateful for really just anything that you're helping them with, they're sharing advice and that. And again, it starts at the top. And I think that's congratulations to the Tampa Bay Wave with that culture they've created. I definitely,
Absolutely. And that's, again, something that you really can't force. And I completely agree with you that that is started from the top, and the leadership for the Wave creates the environment for that community to thrive. And it has been an amazing success here. And I am so excited to see how things develop further. And I'm so happy to be part of it.
yes, 100%. I saw the big 10-year anniversary sign coming into their office. So I echoing everything you say, or ditto. So let me ask you another question about your professional experience. So as mentor advisors, we've been doing this for a little bit, and we've gone through the ups and downs, not just in our business or marketplace or cash flow and all that kind of normal business things that you have to go through. We've also gone through Y2K and, COVID and all of this. And I believe that there are lessons that you can only learn from that experience, no matter if you're Harvard and Columbia, educated like you are, and that you can only go through certain experiences based on your actual true experience. Can you share maybe something that you would, talk about and agree to that you've gone through that really it was an experienced only kind of lesson?
Yes, and for this question, it's funny. I was going to say the lesson that I've learned from experience as a business builder is that everything takes longer and costs more than you think it will, no matter what it is, pretty much across the board. But after thinking about this question a little bit more, I was watching something last night about getting into the flow state, the mental flow state. And we've heard about professional athletes getting into the flow state where things feel effortless. And I think that's an important lesson that I've certainly experienced as a founder, and that I would also like to share with the listeners, which is, when you're building a business, you feel like you want to control everything, and you're planning and you're disciplined and you're organized and you're doing all the right things. But sometimes you have to let in to the flow and allow things to transpire the way that they are supposed to. And your natural response when some things like that happen, COVID is a great example, is to tense up and to resist and try to put some control back onto a situation that feels very much out of control. And that's natural. We are driven people. We want to succeed and accomplish things, but it also can create a lot of anxiety internally and stress because we're not able to control most situations. And so being able to tap into that flow state where it's okay to sit back and to let go a little bit and let things happen. Yes, you want to meet with that investor tomorrow and you want to get their check the next day. That's probably not going to happen.
Right.
Taking a step back, being patient, thinking about a bigger plan, a bigger vision will alleviate a lot of stress and tension, and you'll have more fun along the road.
Great lesson. There's our podcast title, right? Tap into the flow for your segment. It's so important. And I was thinking as you were talking about a sign that I got years ago from someone that says, every little thing is going to be okay. You know, and it was like a line in a song. And I think that when you go up and down, like I was saying, surviving Y2K, the .com for our company, that, you know, COVID and all of that, you know, it's going to work out okay. And so that road of experience does let you sit back, take a breath. You're not going to get paid this week. Guess what? You might get that investor check in 2.5 weeks. Think about that, rest on that. Don't stress out. It all works out. It's, you know, and then there's that element of just keep on going forward, no matter what you're going through. So I
Yes.
love that. Hashtag let into the flow. Very cool. All right. So I was wondering, how did you know, you really, it seems like from your background and what I know about you, you know, you went into these great schools and really hit the ground running as like you said, you didn't plan to start the business, but you did. I mean, tell me, has that always been somewhere a part of you as far as wanting to be an entrepreneur, wanting to be in business or want to be a startup, all of that about you? Was it there even kind of before, like in your early years? Tell me about that.
It was. I grew up in a family where we were very entrepreneurial, and I think as a child, I had small businesses like a lot of kids do, but my parents always really fostered that kind of entrepreneurial spirit. And so I think it was always in my mind. I initially, when I went to Harvard, I was pre-med for a very short period, but then realized that I was more inclined to business and going into business. I first started working at Goldman Sachs and really loved that environment, and it's an amazing company, and I feel fortunate to have worked there for a number of years. And the role that I was working, or the role that I had before I left, was actually working with entrepreneurs in private wealth management. And I always was drawn to that part of the business for the fact that you are interacting with business builders and founders and successful entrepreneurs. So I think it was always in my mind, but to echo the earlier point, life presents opportunities and you can only make a decision based on the information you have today or when that decision is being made. And so for me, I had always had that interest. And then as the circumstances sort of aligned, I knew I had to give it a shot and start my own business. And I have never really looked back. I started a second business about 8 years ago called Core Satellite Partners, where I advise other businesses and founders and leadership teams across a variety of different industries and organizations. And I've loved doing that work because working with the people who are innovating and building and creating things, it's like nothing else. It's so exciting. It's very challenging for them and to achieve, certain milestones as one is building a business. But I love the work I do, and that's also why I love being here and being part of this ecosystem.
I'm glad you brought up your company, Core Satellite Partners. We were going to go there. Perfect segue. You said it's really challenging. Tell us about a challenge in your business, or what people say. Tell us the top 2 challenges of your company. Share with us, please.
Well, I think there are 2 types of challenges. The challenges for me as someone running this business are there is a lot of uncertainty, just like any business. I am working with clients one-on-one, create customized support programs based on their goals, and the backdrop of the economic landscape, the marketplace can change at really in an instant. So, that's sort of an operational challenge of always making sure that I am working with good companies and founders and kind of building my business appropriately. The other set of challenges are for my clients as founders and entrepreneurs who are going through the process of building a company, and it's hard. I think we spend a lot of time really on almost the mental side of things, which is
Mindset.
yes, the mindset, because of so many things that are out of our control and just managing expectations. I think that's one of the biggest things for founders to have to kind of level set is managing their own expectations. Most founders, when they get out of the gate, they're so excited and passionate, and that's wonderful. I don't want to dampen that, but it can be hard to kind of dial back the expectations and that lesson of things take longer than you want them to most of the time. And that's why I think it's important to have multiple things that you're pursuing at the same time. So even if you're just mentally able to kind of switch gears and give yourself a boost when this situation is moving along, even when this one is kind of simmering, I think that's a really good tactic that I talk to my clients about a lot is
That's
just
a great strategy. So you're saying, okay, so then if this isn't going as planned, or you're starting to get frustrated because you're pushing too much, let's go ahead and work on maybe this other line of revenue, or let's work
Yes.
on, you've got some digital marketing stuff. And I love
Yes.
that idea
Yes.
within the business.
Yes.
So that's a different strategy. I like it.
It's critical. I mean, I think we are always our own worst enemy. You know,
Yeah.
what happens between our ears is sort of will make or break us. And I think it's hard, especially the journey as a founder is very lonely.
Mhm.
Even if you have a team or co-founders, it's extremely lonely, and you may not have a lot of people that you can really relate to when you go out and do your own thing. And so that's important to be able to always be able to draw confidence from something you're doing. And so I also encourage my clients to, at the end of the day, like make a list of things that went well today as that constant kind of reminder that you are making progress and there are good things and there are really positive kernels in your business. And it's hard. I mean, every day can be very challenging if you kind of think about it that way. So a lot of the work we do is on the mindset and kind of the mental game.
That's fantastic. I've never heard that end of day well list. I mean, I'll mentor to, do your, we would call it hit list, say, okay, hit list, but don't put anything on your hit list that you 100% won't get done that day. So maybe it's 3 things, but never that. And then what did you do? Great. At the end of the day, I love that. Such a great tip. That's really, we're going to adopt that.
Great.
Yeah, no, the expectations, and like you said, even from the client standpoint, from the clients of the founder standpoint, can be difficult. And you've got to really, I think we've learned in our book publishing business 8 years now, that we really have to be very detailed of detailing that expectations for brand new authors that have no idea what the publishing journey looks like, but they have this whole set of expectations, right? And even with that, we still struggle. So there's that. And then, like you said, the founders that we work with, the co-works that we've mentored, and that you do find that they're so on fire and they're so great and they're so driven, but sometimes that fail of maybe they didn't get the money that they thought they were going to get, it puts them in a mental tailspin. So you're talking about that. So I can see how, so Core Satellite Partners helps with that. Tell us how long you've been, working with clients and
I
that a
started
little
the
bit more.
business about 8 years ago, really organically, because friends and people I knew were approaching me about, how do I start a business? I have an idea. How do I patent it? And so I decided to create the business to be able to support other founders. And it's really been fun to see the business expand. Initially, most of my clients were in the consumer space, consumer products, but I have ventured off into other areas. I mentioned fintech is an area I've had several clients in, and biotech, health and wellness. And it's interesting because at different stages, a lot of my clients are in the earlier stages doing maybe seed or Series A, but I've also worked with some later stage companies with growth tactics and kind of strategic development initiatives. And so what's interesting, even though every client is different, every business is different, there are common themes, and a lot of it comes back to people.
Yes.
The founders, the
Yes.
team, the hiring. I mean, any business is really only as good as its people. That's the biggest asset
100%.
of a business
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
an organization.
Yeah.
And So that's what makes it really fun. Really enjoy interacting with the teams and being with them as they're, building the businesses and making progress and being there even when they're having setbacks and being able to reframe situations so that they can not get in that tailspin and they can get up the next day and feel, okay, I can do this.
Sounds like a perfect fit for sure. I love that you're doing that. Well, I knew this would go fast. So I'm going to ask you our main question, not our main question, but what the question we like to ask at the end of the podcast and what the show is about is, what can you share with us that no one knows, what no one knows? Maybe one human. Sometimes I'll say you can tell one human on the earth, but right now, what can you share that no one knows about you?
I hated sixth grade. I was not a good student. I really struggled in school, and only really my parents know this. I had a really hard time, and even though I ended up going to great schools, was not on that path initially. And I'll tell you a brief story with the lesson associated with that. Sixth grade for me was the first year of middle school. It was a wake-up call. Elementary school was great, and all of a sudden I was with kids that were taking drugs and getting pregnant, and I wanted nothing to do with that. I was not having a good time, so I just didn't wanna go. I was absent a lot the first, semester. My dad, bless him, had to play Christmas music for me to get to school in the morning because it gave me something to look forward to, and I was struggling. We had assemblies, after every quarter where kids would be recognized for straight A's. They would be recognized for perfect attendance. And I remember some way through sixth grade, something planted in my head of I could get perfect attendance. And so next year, the seventh grade year, that was my goal to get perfect attendance. And what happened by getting to school every day, I started to love school and I started to enjoy school and I started to enjoy doing my homework and I got straight A's. I got the recognition at the assembly, and it put me on a path that ultimately led me to go to Harvard. And I bring this up as something that no one knows because some people, when they meet me or they look at my background, they're, oh, it was easy for her. It wasn't always easy for me. And that, even though I was only 11 years old, there was a switch that went off in my head, which is not dissimilar from what founders experience, which is the situation doesn't feel good. I don't know what to do. I'm not liking this. What can I control? Well, the only thing I can control is showing up. I can go to school. I can't control what the kids do, what the teachers do, whatever happens during the day, but I can go. And that just put me on a path that I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't kind of flipped that switch. And so what I always like to kind of think about and tell others is you just have to show up. I guarantee you will learn something if you just go. And if you go and learn, it means you're going to make progress no matter what. And progress leads to growth, and growth is really the fun of life.
Love this. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that story. Thank you for all the wisdom that you gave us and for being here in the Tampa Bay Wave studios. Thank you, Rebecca Brown of Core Satellite Partners, and keep up the great inspiration.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for listening to our show, What No One Knows. If you'd like more information regarding our guests, it's in the description below, as well as if you'd like to work with our publishing and promotion team, that you can also find in the links. Thank you.